Welcome to Podtendo's Legend of Zelda Retrospective. We're going to go in-depth into characters, game design, and thematical elements for the Legend of Zelda games for the Nintendo 64. Enjoy. Hey guys, welcome to Podtendo's Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Retrospective! We're going to deep dive into thematical elements, gameplay / design, and the characters that have been captivating gamers since 1998. We're going to spoil the adventure, so if you haven't experienced this game for yourself, or it's just been a while, go play it yourself before continuing. We're going to be doing this over the course of the year, so play along. You could play through it at once, and we can just kind of remind you throughout the year. There's no right answers. So much like we did for Final Fantasy VII last year, we're going to be doing a whole year-long event. I think we've got something like 11 or 12 shows, something like that, lined up. We're going to tear this game apart over the next few months, and we want you to be along for the journey. You know, like basically, we're going to deep dive, and we're going to find out how this game became a cultural phenomenon, for lack of a better word, right? And this is our very first episode. I'm your co-host, Mick. I'm joined every episode by my lovely co-host,
Tyson.
Nice. So we suffered through Final Fantasy VII last year, and we thought, hey, let's suffer through Legend of Zelda this year. That seems like a good idea, right?
Yeah. It's definitely suffering playing these games. You know, they're just No, we're joking. Of course not. These games are fantastic, and it's actually a joy to play the 8 or the 3DS or 3DS remakes of these games. Because not gonna lie, finding an old N64 that hooks up to an HD TV takes a conversion box I do not have.
Nice. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I happen to have a 60-inch flat screen. I mean, it's like a rear projection TV, so don't be jealous of my 60-inch, like, giant TV that's in my basement. That'll never, ever get out of my basement. Like, gravity basically got it in, and there's no force on Earth strong enough to take it out, let's put it that way. So, and I do have an N64. I might have a copy of my original Zelda game that I could play for this podcast, because I haven't done that quite yet. I played through the 3DS just to kind of get my bearings on it. So, but as we're going to dive into this, and I guess we're starting the year off. Happy 2021. This is our first show coming at you fast. We'll get back into the number of shows, obviously, next week. And then every other week, according to the plan, is going to be kind of a Zelda retrospective. Good stuff, you know. In our first episode, though, we are going to look at the pop cultural landscape looked like when this game was made, when it made its first appearance. We're going to share our first experience before diving into kind of the first area / level of the game, and then wrap up with a character study on our main man, Link. Sounds like a good plan?
Sounds like a plan.
Nice. So obviously this episode's going to be probably like a little different. If you want to get more like Zelda, and we talk more game, we'll probably be doing that next or in a month's time, you know, when we get to kind of like the later shows. But this one, we have to stay true to our roots and just kind of do the nitty-gritty stuff, you know. Like, we have to, before we talk about anything else, jump into our patented Wayback Machine and travel back to November 21st, 1998. We're going to ask Tyson, what's your favorite show? Could it be The Simpsons, Season 10, Episode 7? Lisa gets an A. Lisa is sick and becomes obsessed with a video game. She must cheat on a test, which gives her school a basic assistance grant. Will she able to keep the lie together for the betterment of her classmates? No, she can't. She's the worst. Or Silver Surfer, Season 1, Episode 13. The End of Eternity? Surfer is warned that Thanos has found a way to make time flow backwards, thus bringing an end to the universe. When it appears he dies in battle with Thanos, Eternity and Infinity wonder if all has been lost, leaving us the end of the Silver Surfer cartoon and a cliffhanger. So that sounds like a fun time. So Tyson, of those two shows, what would you rather watch?
Well, I definitely can't wait for Season 2 of Silver Surfer. I hope it comes out soon. Yeah, no, I've tried to watch these old Silver Surfer cartoons because I remember like when this was actually airing, and I kept trying to put it on, and you would be so bored to tears because it was like the worst animation and terrible story, and mostly just him monologuing. It's really tough for me to pick the Silver Surfer after knowing that it's like I wanted it to be good so badly, but it just wasn't, because he was and is, you know, one of my favorites. It just never quite got handled the way I always wanted that chrome awesome surfer to be handled. So I think I got to go with The Simpsons here, even though it is at least a heavy episode. But at least she's relatable for the first half of the episode.
It's true. She plays video games, so there you go. So good job, Simpsons. Nice. Big year for the Simpsons, you know. There you go. Good job, Simpsons.
Yep. Last of season 10. Some would say the end of an era.
Yeah, that does kind of start going downhill after this, so that's too bad. Yeah. All right. What about other top TV shows you could be watching? You could watch Dawson's Creek, Felicity, Sex and the City, or Will and Grace. Well, those don't do anything for you. How about top cartoons? You can see the Powerpuff Girls, Celebrity Deathmatch, Godzilla the series, Hercules, Hysteria, and Tyson's favorite show of all time, Invasion America.
Yes. Excellent. Hey, so when Steven Spielberg does something, he does it right. And let's just say with like Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain, Freakazoid, Hysteria, Invasion America, I'm just saying that man, we might owe him a thanks or two.
It's true. It is very true. And
for those of you who don't know what Invasion America is, just Google it, because we can't do it justice, and you just need to enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a very fun, mini-series, essentially. So it's not even a whole series, just a mini-series, which I don't know what a mini-series is. Is it just like 5 to 10 episodes?
Yeah, usually around 6 or so. That's like the average, and it's a self-contained story with basically like it will tell you the whole thing. It's not longer than a movie broken up into a TV show, so that's a miniseries. Okay,
interesting, cool, yo. What was I gonna say? Oh, Hook. Back at Christmas time, we watched Hook. It takes place at Christmas time. Might be one of the better Christmas movies of all time. So do yourself a favor next year. Watch Hook for Christmas.
Nice. Then when people ask you, oh, hey, what's your favorite Christmas movie? You can drop the bomb. Oh, I like Hook. And they'll be like, oh, I didn't know it's a Christmas movie. And be like, oh, you clearly haven't watched it in years. And you feel all smug at a Christmas party.
I mean, if Die Hard counts, Hook definitely counts. So,
I count that and Gremlins.
Nice. Yeah, those are good ones. Nice. How about movies? So top movies that came out in November 98 or something? I've scrolled down too far. Yeah. November 21st, 1998. So movies. So this week you could see A Bug's Life, Enemy of the State, Rugrats the movie. Still in theaters, you could see I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, Meet Joe Black, The Waterboy, and Elizabeth. And if you waited a few weeks, you could see Babe, Pig in the City, the remake of Psycho, Shakespeare in Love, or Star Trek Insurrection.
So very 90s. You got some awesome classics. And then you got some forgettable movies. Man, Rugrats the movie, whenever that came out back in the day, that was this is taking me back. I'm remembering more and more every single day.
Nice. Honestly, not a terrible collection. It's definitely I definitely remember playing Legend of Zelda and quoting The Waterboy with my friends or something like that. Or
watching Babe, Pig in the City. I definitely remember that because it's not quite as good as the first Babe. So and everybody walked out of the theater being like, it was not as good, right? It's like, no, not as good.
Yeah, it gets kind of goofy and gets kind of too surreal. You know, it's a little too surreal. The first one, you're like, oh, that makes sense. That's real life. And the next one, you're like, oh, no, I don't think it's real life anymore.
Yeah, like, Bugs Life. These animals live in houses.
Bugs Life, I mean, the number of times I've seen that movie in French, that in Monsters, Inc. I don't know if I've ever seen them in English, but in French class, those movies were beaten into me. They must have been the only movies our school owned, and we would just watch them once in a while in French class. Don't know the plot of it. Didn't learn French.
Didn't help, but we watched a movie, and that was entertaining, and I could turn my brain off at school for a bit. So
yeah. This will help me learn. Turning my brain off. How about top video games released around this time? You could be playing NBA Live 99, Sonic R, Half-Life, and Tomb Raider 3. So this is a pretty big month in video games.
Yeah, dang. If you're a console gamer, you're happy. I mean, unless you bought Sonic R. Because I've played that game. I have a friend that was really big into Sonic, and that game. I've never played a racing game that was so broken. But
yeah,
Half-Life. Yeah. But it's fantastic. Yeah, I still can't wait for Half-Life 3.
It's coming anytime. We're here. We're here, Valve. Come on. And how about top 3 songs? We'll get out of this Wayback Machine very soon. We just got to listen to 3 short clips and find out the Billboard charts. Then we can answer that age-old question is, do we want to live there? I don't know if I've said that yet, so now I've said it. So the number 3 song, according to the Billboard charts in November 21st, 1998 was 1 Week by the Bare Naked Ladies.
Can't I help it if I think you're funny when you're mad? Trying hard not to smile though I feel bad. I'm the kind of guy who laughs at a funeral. Can't understand what I mean, well you soon will. I have a tendency to wear my mind on my sleeve. I have a history of taking off my shirt. It's been 1 week since you looked.
That song is very fun to listen to, but it gets annoying more than any other song in the history of the world.
Yeah. Good old BNL.
Like, yeah. Like, it's one of those things, like, if it was on a random playlist at a party and it starts playing, you're like, fuck yeah, that's a great song. But if it's on, like, a constant, like, your workout playlist, you're going to be sitting there and you're going to be like, this sucks. I hate this so much.
Yeah, I think if you hear it, like, when you're in the right mood, that once
more
in
than
a blue
once a
moon,
week?
Unacceptable more than once a week. And that's why I feel like, so I think like there's a funny fact like that 1 Week by Bare Naked Ladies literally lasted 1 week in the number one slot, and then it fell out.
Okay.
And that's the joke of it, because it lasted 1 week.
Yeah,
it's like, so
interesting. Okay, all right. So now that we had a little segue, I had trouble finding the next song, so that was good actually, because the number 2 song according to the Billboard charts is "The First Night" by Monica. That one.
No, don't remember bumping into that.
All right. What about this next one? Oh no. All right. So it's fuck. Why are they so hard to find?
Because it's 90s music, and it was popular in the 90s, and then everybody got out of the 90s and was like, what were we thinking?
Oh, I did it. All right. So the number 1 song according to the Billboard charts is "Do Wop That Thing" by Lauryn Hill. Heard that one either.
No, God's a blank, unfortunately. Good beat though.
Yeah. Oh no. Like at no point I was just gonna let it play until I heard the song. Like that was a fine song. I just obviously wasn't my choice of music. I was really into Bare Naked Ladies. Misleadingly, by the way, you assholes. I bought so many CDs expecting to see Bare Naked Ladies. God damn it. Still not over it.
They got our monies.
They knew it. They're like, young boys will like us for some reason. We don't know why. So there you go. So there's our pop cultural. We know what the landscape looks like, and you're like, oh yeah, well maybe a movie, maybe a TV show, maybe a song jumps out at you, and you're like, oh that's when Zelda came out. Or maybe you're almost like a functioning person. You have some memories, you have some autonomy of your own, and you remember those things. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna dive into our first memories and talk about mine and Tyson's personal experience with this game before looking at the actual game itself. Kind of a little fun segments that we're going to be reoccurring throughout this retrospective, and then we're out of here. It's going to be a fairly short show today, so thank you for sticking with us. First memories. Do you want to start, or should I start?
Why don't you start?
All right, so I think I first saw this game as an early advertisement in like a gaming magazine, Edge magazine, I think is what it's called. If you Google Edge magazine, Tyson, you could do that while I talk, and you're going to be like, we definitely had that copy. Or maybe a Nintendo Power or something like that. It kind of seemed like Nintendo's answer to the cool Final Fantasy VII. Finally, this mature action game, to call my own on my personal favorite N64. I had a friend with an older brother who worked and bought this game. He had his N64 like right at the start. He had Mario 64. We played at his house, and he bought this. So I went over one night. We played through the Deku Tree. We played through the Dongo's Cavern. I was just hooked. I thought it was great. I knew we were getting it for Christmas, but I couldn't wait that long. So at some point we had rented it on a weekend and got KFC. And I believe we played up until we meet Darunia or like the Dongo's Cavern, because I had these like crazy uncooked chicken fever dreams brought on by like the Ocarina of Time and the chicken, and then finally 98 Christmas rolls along. We get a strategy guide in our stockings. We get Ocarina of Time under the tree, and it'd be great. I must have played through this game, I don't know, a dozen times, if not more. I play through it all the time. I've done challenge runs. I've done like no heart runs. I've done you name it. I played this game. One of my favorite games of all time. And that's maybe something I have to come to terms with as we do this retrospective is this my favorite video game of all time? I don't know. But Tyson, what are your first memories?
Yeah, no, I didn't remember renting it, but I remember like getting it and playing it. Looking at the old Edge magazine cover, issue 66. It's gold with like Link
Yep.
mid charge up pose. Awesome artwork. And this was the stuff that made me like fall in love with Legend of Zelda. Like I loved A Link to the Past because of the little animated comic that went along with it, and I always just thought that
Yep.
that artwork was fantastic. And same with the random Zelda book that we had about moblins and hiding bombs in trees. And I remember specifically getting this and staring probably more at the strategy guides and the magazine and like the art of it because you're playing the game and it's a single player game. So I
Yes.
feel like I remember a lot of the old strategy guide and just like going through the PDF copy or whatever I was just looking at. It's kind of funny that it's, man, I remember like just like vivid screenshots of that entire like magazine because I must have just been staring at it guiding you when you were like hunting the gold skeletas and stuff. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
I definitely
Well,
I remember that, but I also remember like each of us having our own play file,
Yep.
and us and like our friends down the road playing it, and we all used to compare like, oh, where are you at? How many hearts did you have? How many gold skeletas? And like my one claim to fame was next to my file. I was maxed out. I was the 99 first. I didn't realize that was deaths. So when everybody else caught up, like, hey, we got there, and it's like, wait a minute, this is deaths. This is not a good thing to keep track of. So we all had. I remember, I was so proud of that. I got 99 first.
that is delightful.
So
All right, nice. You don't remember the crazy KFC fever dream renting, eh? That's too bad. That was an awful evening for me.
no, but I do remember like Dodongo's Cavern giving us the worst times, and honestly, like replaying this game, there's like certain points where like, oh, I remember this. Why did I struggle so hard about this as a child? And then just like that, I feel like that is, I don't get where the difficulty. Like I must have gotten just like hand-eye coordination just infinitely improved, or the N64 controller was just terrible. I mean, I just dealt with it because I specifically remember like actually like not knowing how to navi like auto aim. So I just like manually aimed the whole game, and then I think it was like during the Ganon fight, somebody just hold Z, and you're like, oh my god, it's so much easier. It's like, you haven't been holding Z the whole time. It's like, no. It's like, no wonder you die all the time. You're terrible at this game.
Yeah.
The first thing you learn.
So, I mean, one of the things we should talk about, because as we're doing a retrospective on this 3D gaming is, and maybe we'll dive more into it in like a later show when there's a little bit less content as like a theme or something, but that change from kind of 2D to 3D, right? So we were really well versed before all this with 2D games, right? So you think of some of your favorite games, more than likely 2D adventures, right? Your Super Mario Worlds, your Castlevania Symphony of the Nights, maybe a little bit more of a modern take. And it was that kind of that shift to 3D, and I think people really struggled with that, right? So like even as we just start talking about the level note section, we'll get into Kokiri Forest, and it's this awesome playground. And I remember as a child, there was this little ladder bridge that goes across the village, and if you get to the end, you get, I think it's 10 rubies, and that's the reward, right? Like you get to the end, you get this little thing, it's like, oh, congratulations, you learned how to walk on this bridge. Impossible. Like you might as well, you could have put Zelda there. I couldn't have got there as a child because that shift to 3D perspective, at least from as like a young gamer, was so intense. And people don't get that nowadays because they grow up with it, right? Like some of the kids' first games might be 3D adventures, right? Like they're running around in these open worlds. But think of how tough Mario 64 was in 96 or 97 or 98 when you played it, right? Versus it now, and you're like, well, this is a very simple game. This is a very neat platformer, right? So I think it's just that shift to 2D to 3D that really threw us for a loop, right? And kind of jacked up the difficulty of this game versus I could basically play this game with my eyes like blindfolded at this point. It's almost second nature, right?
Yeah, and I guess like just to elaborate a little bit, because you're shifting the camera perspective from 2D to 3D, it essentially becomes a free-flowing perspective. So your controls now vary on how your camera looks. So now we need to, instead of just having a fixed camera and knowing that up and down do the same thing no matter where you are, you need to have in the back of your mind of like, oh, where's the camera? But we don't even think about that. Like playing a first-person shooter, Like, that's why there's 2 sticks. Like, it's instinctual to control it with one and move around with the other.
Yeah.
At least it takes a little bit of learning curve, but eventually your brain just clicks and it makes so much sense. So I feel like that you're probably exactly right, because this was one of my first 3D games. It was just probably just like fighting the camera more than anything else.
Oh, 100%. And it was just like learning those things, right? And like, it's hard to come with a perspective of, what was your first game? If your first system was N64 or a GameCube or a PlayStation 3, you're not going to understand what it was like growing up with the NES and the Super Nintendo and shifting to 3D, right? It was a giant cultural shift, right? It was almost like, it'll be like what happens when flying cars come out. People are going to be crashing everywhere. You're not going to be able to stay up on the ground. It's going to be awful. And then kids are just going to grow up in flying cars, and flying cars will be the normality. And they'll be like, why would you ever drive on the ground if you could just fly? And they won't understand this giant shift, but it's almost that big of a leap that we made from 2D to 3D, right? So, and not a lot of people were well versed, right? Like, if you look at the library of N64 games between Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time, there wasn't a lot out there that people were like jumping onto. GoldenEye, but GoldenEye is kind of just Doom, right? It's like a better version of Doom. We've done that. We've seen this moving around, but now all of a sudden it's like, control yourself, jump, learn how to walk on bridges. It's very, very difficult. So,
And this was kind of the dawn of the 3D age. So,
100%, 100%. Yeah, so like maybe we'll do a little more of a deep dive at some point to look at kind of 3D to 2D games or something. That was just kind of like a palate cleanse, or an appetizer, right? We're just getting you savoring for this. And now, the story. Our tale begins with narration from the great Deku Tree, the guardian of the forest, as he tells that there's a great stirring of evil in the world. We then cut to a young boy in bed as he has a nightmare about a drawbridge, a princess fleeing in distress, and an evil man in black. We cut back to the great Deku Tree as he summons a fairy, Navi, to go out and search for this boy who's having a nightmare. And he quips, the boy's journey is about to begin. But now we're going to specifically look. It's 22 minutes into our first podcast, and we're going to talk for 5 minutes about Legend of Zelda before we do something else, because that sounds fun. So we'll move on to our Let's Play notes. We're going to deep dive through every area of the game and kind of give a brief overview. So we're going to start with the Kokiri Forest. So after Navi wakes us up, we leave our house, are greeted by our friend Saria. We head towards the great Deku Tree, but are stopped by the town bully, Mido. He won't give us access until we have a sword and shield. So we must explore the town, collect 40 rupees, buy a shield, and find/borrow the Kokiri sword. So in that first area, I think they've created an amazing open world for us to explore and learn the new controls. And if you fully explore behind all the buildings, you can easily amass the 40 rupees. So there's like some little blocks in the water. If you jump over them correctly, you get 10 rupees. There's one behind a house. If you go into like everyone's house, there's some treasure chests. Easily you get to 40, no problem. As a kid, I remember grinding out. There's like a house with like 2 weird pillars on it. And if you go in it, you break a pot, you get 5 rupees. I would just do that 8 times. And I thought that was easier than actually building skills, right? So, dumb kids.
That's the kids' way of doing it. It's like, oh, this works. Let me just do this. So,
yeah.
But it's kind of nice to get you like a little like safety area. There's no enemies to deal with. Just kind of get used to the controls. So,
yeah. Okay. Nice. So that's how we're going to break section by section, read what happens. I'll give you kind of my quick synopsis, my analysis of that area. Tice, if you want to do the same, then we'll move on. So, anything else to add just with kind of that first area, that Kokiri area?
Everybody's really rude to Link, and it's bugging me. These Kokiri kids are really. Why gotta be so insensitive to a man with no fairy? He's Link. He's pretty cool, but
yeah, it's kind of racist, really.
Yeah,
it's a little different, and let's judge him. Huh.
Yeah, and let's not accept him because he's different.
Yeah, that sounds mean. But if we do all those things, we get a sword and a shield. We're allowed access past Mido. We pass some scary little plants, and we make it to the great Deku Tree. He requests us. He tells us we have to go inside. We have to defeat the evil within him, and he'll prevent us with a Kokiri emerald and send us on our way. But first off, we must go inside his mouth. So we go inside this giant tree, and there's kind of two parts to this dungeon. There's a vertical section, which sees us finding a slingshot, solving 2 puzzles, and climbing to the top area. We can then do a jump attack from the top, break the spider web, which gives us an access to the second area, which is kind of more of a horizontal section. So here we are on a linear path. We got to burn some webs, reflect some nuts, lower some water, and avoid some spikes. This leads us back to the first area that we dropped into, where we can drop a block, create a shortcut, which gives us access to fire so that we can gain access to the boss room. The first area of the dungeon is kind of more amazing than the second. Their use of vertical 3D space was kind of just groundbreaking, right? Doing a jump attack and breaking the web seemed like an actual really hard thing to do. It is almost second nature at this point. You're like, of course, I would just jump off and break through this web. Really, really difficult. The second half has some puzzles, and they just kind of come out of nowhere, right? Like you're in a room and you reflect use your shield and reflect a little Deku seed back at the shrub, and you kill him, and then you're like, what? And you look around and you're like, oh, there's an eye, and you shoot the eye and the door opens. And I'm like, is that a puzzle? It's kind of a... Is that a puzzle? Is that just...
Yeah, or you walk in a room, and then you flick a switch, and then, like, water raises, and then you open a chest.
Yeah.
And you're like, is this all I'm doing?
Yeah.
But this is kind of the early spots of the kind of the troubled spots of this game, and I'll just mention it quickly, is that a lot of the, like, layouts of certain levels, because it's all very the same, like, they're very restricted with the hardware, it's like, it just looks similar, where you're just like, is this another room at Deku Shrubs? And you're like, is this the first one or the third one or the, like, what, like, you kind of, like, I'm happy I have the map right next to me, because it's kind of like, I even get lost sometimes, because it's still just like, it looks so samey, and it's just like, oh, I see where you almost, like, reuse some assets, and it almost makes the game a little confusing, because it's not differentiated enough. And this isn't the worst offender. There's another level that's coming up that's, in another podcast, I will have to go off on a tangent of how samey and how it is the worst.
Yeah, fair enough. We might learn some things about this game doing this retrospective. So I would argue that there's actually a distinct lack of enemies that pose a threat. I realize we have 3 hearts. We've only got our shield, a slingshot, and a sword. But like the spiders that just kind of hang from the ceiling and then they spin around. Well, if you wait for them to spin around, you attack them. There's no threat. The Deku Babas that just come out of the ground and like will attack you. Well, they're pretty easy to figure out their pattern and attack them. The shrubs, they don't really, like, if you just hold R, you hold up your shield, they're done, right? So like there's really no threats to your health in this, and it's just kind of weird. I guess maybe like the baby gomas that kind of attack you, they're kind of freaky. I remember being scared at one point when one was chasing me down, because you're like, oh, that's kind of a scary little enemy. But like, and that might be a recurring theme as we play this game, is why aren't the enemies difficult?
Yeah, and I feel like it's like I think some of the hardest bad guys in the game are like, oh no, keys, like not this bat that's flying towards me. It's like it might be on fire, then it might be in actual trouble. Yeah, like the base enemies are really straightforward, but I could see how it's almost nice that they're so simplified, because we just know how to deal with these. So if you're seeing them for the first time, I think the first time coming across the Deku Shrub, like, is it intuitive to pull out your shield to reflect it back on them?
I guess. Yeah, you might take some damage. Yeah, fair enough.
You know, like, so I think like maybe the first time you interact with everybody, or if you're like not very perceptive and you keep running underneath you're not noticing the shadows under the ground underneath the giant skeletons, maybe that's why. But like, so, but for us that are very observant and know how to handle these enemies, it's a little bit easier. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, and then one of the better parts of this game, and that's one of the things I'll highlight, and again, they are making this big shift to 3D, so like they didn't really know how to make games either. Like they weren't super proficient. This is one of their very first attempts, was the bosses, and the bosses in this game are some of the best parts. So final boss of this area, and then we're done with our notes. That was very, very fast, is Queen Goma. So we walk into a room, we look at the ceiling, which prompts the beginning of the fight. When she climbs on the ceiling, you can shoot her with your slingshot, which stuns her, and you can then attack her. After each attack, she retreats to the ceiling, and if you use a Deku stick and the jump attack, you deal more damage. If, however, you wait too long, she will kind of sprout these like eggs, and then these little tiny Goba babies come and attack you, and they can be kind of challenging. So if you wanted to make it more difficult, you could like spawn a bunch of little Deku or like Goma babies and attack them. Something. It's like pretty good use of a 3D space for the first boss. You definitely have to look at the ceiling. She's not overly hard, and she doesn't do a lot of damage, which is, again, good because you're not super well equipped. And it's not supposed to be Dark Souls, right? Like, Dark Souls is kind of the, what if we made this, like really took advantage of these, made them a challenge, right? So they don't really do that here because it's a fun game for kids, you know? Yep. Any thoughts on Miss Queen Goma?
Awesome boss. Good like sound design, like the grunts that she makes, very cool. I really like this this boss, and it kind of makes sense. Like, it's a giant bug living in a tree, so you got to kill the bug. But like, so during Dumb Tyson, I had a flashback of what I screwed up as a child. So I seem to remember like getting like confused about like, so I've explored this whole thing. Why can't I find the boss? I know they're in this room, and I run around it, and they don't show up. It's like, you need to look up, and it's like, oh, okay, thank you. And I just remember having that moment of like, I remember running around because there's a few like little, I think, pots or whatever in the corner, or some shrubs where you get hearts. I remember like farming those, but not encountering the boss. And then when I did encounter the boss, I needed the hearts, and then as a child I failed. But once you kind of know the strategy, it's not too bad. And I like the design. Well, if you delay the battle, like the harder it kind of gets. So yeah, if you can kill her really quick, it's not so bad.
Nice. So going forward, so now we beat Goma. I think going forward, I'm going to have like a story recap at the start of the podcast, so I will kind of catch us up on what happened in this episode. So we woke up, we gained some equipment, we went to the Deku tree. I'm gonna like go in and like flesh out the story and do a little bit of a recap. So if you're a little bit lost, we've played that. Next episode, you'll get a more condensed, deep story. We'll talk about it there. but other than that, that is all the game we played. That's the first area. Talked about some of the pros and the cons of the 3D environment. Sound good?
Absolutely. And I'm sure everybody will look forward to the last time on Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, nice. I was actually thinking when you said, like, I ran around and I made the boss too hard and I died, I almost wanted to do, like, a Tyson-owned count and go, ding! Well,
no, I will keep trying to bring up every time that I had a stupid moment as a kid, because I had some breakthroughs of, like, God, I was such a bad gamer as a child. Like, I clearly just had no instincts for platformers or adventures, so I can see why like fighting games for my bread and butter.
Fair enough. And just for the ending, because I definitely did not talk about the story during the initial recording. These are all done in post, but here we go. The ending. So after we defeat Queen Goma, we are teleported outside the Great Deku Tree. He tells us the rest of the story and how the man in black, the evil man in black from our dreams, came to him, and he asked for the sacred Kokiri Emerald, because with this he can hopefully gain access to the Sacred Realm. Now, the Sacred Realm bestows powers upon people that enter it, because it is the remnants of when the three golden goddesses came to Hyrule and bestowed their power upon the land, and they left some type of remnant there, the Triforce. Apparently the man in black wants this Triforce, and we have to get it. So the Great Deku Tree, in his dying requests, because he had a curse put upon him and he is now dying, so sad, we are given the Kokiri Emerald as proof and are told to find the Princess of Destiny to help us on our journey. That's all we know for now. Nice. Okay, and then how about we've got two, well, not one's an old section if you're familiar with our Final Fantasy VII retrospectives, but I got a new section. So this is called Mysterious Areas of Hyrule. There's weird things that go on in this game. You know, that's just going to be a new segment I'm going to show for this retrospective. We'll see what happens. There's weird things that pop up, and you're like, okay. So I'm going to see if I can make types and go, So for our first segment, we're going to look at the Hole of Z. This is the name of the hole that we crawl through to get to the sword. It is located near the Forest Training Center. On the other side of the hole, there is a maze-like area with a giant boulder rolling within it. The hole is renamed the Hole of L in the re-release of this game on the GameCube, since you press L instead of Z to do targeting. So it's actually L targeting in the GameCube. What makes this place so odd is there's a random rolling boulder. How does it keep moving? How does it know to make 90-degree turns? It asks lots of questions. So there's this random, and they hide their sword in there like it's some type of heirloom and no one can use it. So how do you like my first entry into our mysterious areas of Zelda, the Hole of Z?
I have lots of questions because like was the Z supposed to stand for Zelda, or was it supposed to stand for Z now, or was like is the boulder a Goron that's rolling, but it looks more like a boulder and he's just been rolled? Is it sentient?
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, like if it was like a constant rock slide that you had to escape, if it was water, if it was something.
Is
it's
it
just
magic?
a random boulder.
Is it like cursed by a fairy to like as part of the protection of the sword, and only those that are brave enough? Because what's his courage? So there you go. There you go. You have to have the courage to face the boulder that makes no sense to get your sword to start your journey. So,
All right. I made him say it. There you go. So is that a good segment? Should we carry on with mysterious areas of Hyrule?
I think so, because there's a lot of random stuff, and I'm not gonna lie. When we get to the Gold Skeleton Hut, I'm gonna have lots of questions.
Yeah, that might be. Well, we might get there next episode because I think we're walking right past it. So Gold Skeleton Hut for sure. All right, and then finally we'll end with a character study on our main man Link. We'll get out of here. So as a backstory of this guy, as a child, the hero of time, that's what he's called, grows up in the Kokiri forest, believing that he is a Kokiri. But in reality, he is an orphaned Hylian. Because the hero of time was not a Kokiri, he did not possess a fairy companion, which led to him being ostracized by the majority of the Kokiri forest, with the exception of Saria and the Great Deku Tree. So don't feel too bad, because Link had a hot friend Saria and a big tree as a friend, which is strange. Eventually, the hero of time was bestowed with a fairy named Navi to help guide him on his quest to save Hyrule.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it just sucks that the Kokiri are kind of just dicks, but they're not really jerks because they like literally taken someone outside of their area, and they're very just like protective. They don't even leave the forest. Like they're very like inclusion. So I mean, for them to even take in an orphan kid, maybe I gotta cut them some slack.
All right. Nice. How about the anatomy of a character? So Link is dressed in a green tunic and hat. He has pointed ears, blonde hair, and blue eyes. As a child, he wears only the tunic and has bare legs. But when he ages, he gains a pair of white leggings. All right. Okay.
Yep.
How about the pretty typical elven lore, pointed ears, green tunic, very classic look. Archetype. He is the typical hero of Destiny. He is the atypical hero from the journey. So usually the hero has a call to action. So he was summoned by usually like an old companion or something like that, which bestows some wisdom upon him, maybe shows him some type of unknown skill before he's allowed to venture into the world. So what happens in this episode? He is summoned by an old Great Deku Tree, his call to action, and then the Great Deku Tree acts as kind of his old man in the quest and sends him on his journey. So he's right on that hero's journey arc. Pretty exciting.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of why I guess we all related to Link as kids, because he is kind of just like a blank slate and you kind of project yourself into the world. So it's very cool how they do it. And I think that the little tasting of what we've seen so far with the opening credits of a horse running and then waking up in a forest, it's all like misty, and I gotta say, like the straight up like the world that they build is just like they did a really good job bringing this to 3D. It's hard to do, and I know the N64 one's not the greatest, but the HD remake is they did a really good job with it. So I'm very impressed.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, sweet. And then finally, a cultural impact of this character. Link is one of those iconic video game characters of all time. He's right up there with Mario, at least in my opinion. He appears in several other Nintendo games, from Mario Kart to Super Smash Bros. To Mario RPG. And from GameFAQ character battles, he has won number 1, number 3, Tournament of Champions. He won the Battle Royale. He won number 7. He won Character Battle 8. He won Rivalry Rumble. And he also won 10. So he holds a ton of titles. He is one of the most popular video game characters. I don't have to hold punches with that one. He also has 1 second place victory when he lost to the L Block from Tetris in Character Battle 6. So I kind of feel like maybe the internet just really got behind the L Block and they wanted someone other than Link to win these godforsaken tournaments. So there you go. He is very, very iconic indeed.
Yeah. That's he was an underdog that year, L Block, but I think he really campaigned hard. So
Yeah.
we had to pull behind him. He had a really good social media presence. Link's amazing. He's one of the greatest characters. I think he introduced a lot of us to the world of elves and such. Mm-hmm. And he kind of was like the you don't really think of him as an elf, but that's the type, that's the archetype that he is. And I think that's very cool that you can kind of just recognize Link as Link without trying to be like, oh yeah, no, he's clearly he's got some elf ears here and the inspiration for this, and it's no, he's Link.
Yeah.
And he is my main Smash, so I only bust him out if I'm really wanting a win, but that's why I gotta play random. Link's too good.
Nice, fair enough. Nice. So with that, yeah, like we said, that was kind of just our introductory episode. We had to get through Link. He's pretty simple. If you like video games, you probably know at least who Link. If you don't like video games, you probably heard of Link. He's kind of that big. Again, he's up there with the Marios in the world, right? He's sparse. There's not a lot of Zelda games compared to, say, a Mario game. So the fact that he is that popular is something said about just kind of what they've hit on with this character. But there you go. That kind of ends our show. The only thing, guys, I wish we did is tied a little bit more into the story. We kind of just blank slated the game retrospective. I'm not going to add that. I will do that next week. So you have to wait a whole month to get caught up, but I'll do a much nicer job in the future of kind of catching us up and telling the story as we play through the game. So as far as we know, there is no story. We just picked up a random save file and we didn't get any cutscene. So that's sad.
Yeah, none quite yet, but I know. Well, we got a lot of episodes to dive into this. So if anything we miss, we'll make up for it in the next one. I guarantee it.
Nice. With that, hopefully you guys are having a fun 2021 thus far. See you guys in a couple of weeks with a numbered show coming back at you with just some fun stuff. That's all we do, just fun stuff. So Tyson, did we miss anything?
I think I got to say James Bond until it comes out at this point, because...
Oh, man. Could you imagine? You're going to be saying this for years.
Yeah, it will literally be 2023, and I'll be like, James Bond, please. But maybe it'll be released to Netflix when Netflix buys MGM.
Nice. Sweet. Okay. So yes, without further ado, that's all we kind of got. See you guys in a couple weeks. Bye.
Bye.